Hello, my name is Lauren, and I've decided to present on the Aleutians East, Fisheries, Subsistence, and Climate Change. The Aleutians East is the eastern part of the Pinky of Alaska, and it extends into the Bering Sea on the north and the Pacific Ocean on the south. This region is significant in fishery production and in subsistence fishing, but the changing climate has complicated both of these. I'll expand on this through the presentation, first by discussing the history of the Aleutians, then the current state of the region, then the economy of the Aleutians, both the fisheries and the subsistence effect on the economy, then the effect of climate change on both of these. So, to start off, what is the history of the Aleutians? The Aleutians East have been inhabited for 10,000 years by the Aleut and the Aleutic people. In 1741, the Aleut and Aleutic people had their first foreign contact, and many Russian fur traders came to the islands after this. The region became a part of Russian Alaska, and then in 1867, Alaska was purchased by the United States. After World War II, there was a large push for statehood, and then Alaska finally became a state in 1959. This image here is showing salmon fishing in Salmon Point, which is one of the main cities of the Aleutians East. This region has a pretty small population of only about 3,000 people, but that's as of 2017. This population is mostly concentrated in 6 communities. These are Nelson Lagoon here on the upper right, and then King Cove down on the bottom, Cold Bay above King Cove, Akutan, which is all the way to the left, False Pass here in the middle, and then Sand Point, which is on the bottom right. And here's the same map, but slightly larger so you can see the detail. The Aleutians East is circled on the Alaska map up in the corner, and then all the individual centers are highlighted as well. So now onto the economy of the Aleutians East. As I stated before, the economy is dominated by fisheries and by subsistence. So we'll discuss fisheries first and then subsistence next. The fisheries of the Aleutians East are really profitable, millions of dollars of profit every year. For comparison, I included both the 1989 to 1998 breakdown and the 2022 breakdown, so we can see the change over time. The average between 1989 and 1998 was about 15 million salmon, with an ex-vessel value of $32 million. And then in 2022, the salmon harvest yielded only about 11 million salmon, which is $24 million in ex-vessel value. So there was a slight decline in catch numbers from the 90s to 2022, but still a really profitable industry. In addition to profits, fisheries in the Aleutians East provide most of the employment. In 2017, 71% of the borough jobs were in seafood processing. So fisheries obviously have a huge role in the Aleutians East borough, but what about subsistence? Subsistence practices in the Aleutians East borough are no small endeavor. As you can see from this diagram, the 2015 and 2016 subsistence yield in Akutan consisted of 45,000 pounds of marine and terrestrial game, along with berries, greens, etc. Traditionally, all these animals were hunted: seals, whales, sea lions, otters, caribou, walrus, etc., etc., etc. This diagram shows the percentage of each category that was contributed to the subsistence harvest. Almost all the traditional game listed made an appearance there. You can see sea lion, seal, harbor seal, coho salmon, berries. But what I wanted to mention specifically was the percentage of subsistence yield that was devoted to fish. That's 75%. And of this 75%, 47% was salmon alone. The subsistence practices here obviously rely heavy on the fish population, and the implications of climate change are concerning. So what are the effects of climate change on fisheries and subsistence practices here? According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Alaska's oceans are warming 4 times faster than the rest of the ocean. The effect of this is multifold. Sea ice loss, ocean acidification, and temperature increase are all occurring, and all are having a detrimental effect on the marine wildlife. For example, the snow crab population here on these graphs is shown through different statistics. So the first graph A shows the study area, which is in the Bering Sea to the north of the Aleutians. Second graph B shows snow crab abundance from 1975 to 2022, and you can see the fluctuations, of course, but then a sharp decline right before 2020. Graph C is the borealization index, And graph D also shows the borealization index, but D shows the index between 1972 to 2022, so you can see the trend. And it's increasing, which means Arctic characteristics are decreasing. Graph E and graph F both show the abundance of snow crab graphed with Bayesian regression on the borealization index. So we can see a decline in the snow crab population as well as a decrease in Arctic characteristics due to climate change. Another population that's suffering due to climate change is the Chinook salmon and coho salmon. In 2023, according to NOAA, they reached record low levels of abundance. And this graph here shows that. This NOAA graph shows both Chinook, chum, and sockeye salmon in size in millimeters, and then in fecundity, which is the ability to reproduce successfully. So these graphs show not only population decline, but also quality decline of the salmon. Due to these changes, both fisheries and subsistence practices have been affected. Between 2018 and 2023, 17 fishery disaster declarations were declared. This is significant, especially in comparison with the number of disaster declarations in the 32 years before that. So between 1985 and 2017, there were only 7 disaster declarations. This shows a more than twofold increase in the number of fishery disasters occurring, which can be attributed partially to changing fish populations due to climate change. In addition to this, Reedy's 2016 study showed declines in subsistence species abundance and in size in all the Aleutian East communities interviewed. This is really alarming, to say the least. So what can we do? NOAA has come up with a climate science strategy, which is intended to increase the resilience of living marine resources and to reduce the impacts of climate change. And this takes place through 7 objectives. The first of these is to identify reference points for managing the living marine resources. The second is to identify strategies for managing these resources. Third is to design processes to respond to climate change. Fourth is to identify future states of the ecosystem. Fifth is to identify the mechanisms of climate change on ecosystems. Sixth is to track those trends and warn of change. And then 7 is to build and maintain the actual science infrastructure that's needed to fulfill those objectives. This could take the form of restrictions on catch numbers, for example, or green policies, or even just increasing research into the effects of climate change. So over the course of this presentation, we've discussed the history of the Aleutians East, the economy, fisheries, and subsistence, and then we examine the effect of climate change on these processes. We next examine what steps can be taken to bolster the population and prevent further decline. All in all, climate change is negatively affecting subsistence practices and fisheries production in the Aleutians East region, but by introducing, managing, and maintaining restorative practices, we can hope for a brighter future. And here are my works cited. Thank you.